think or feel about something?
The way you think or feel about something is an attitude. Anyone been accused of having an attitude? Right? So my dad was my pastor. And so growing up, I was a preacher's kid, right? And so we would, on Sunday, we would open up the church at 7:30 a.m. And we closed the church at 11:30 p.m. We'd stop at 3 o'clock for chicken, not because we were black, but because chicken is delicious. So all day church on Sunday. So Friday night, I asked my dad for the car. And because my dad loves me, what does he say?
No.
He says, yes, he loves me. Right? So he tosses me the keys. I'm hanging out with my friends. And I put gas in the car. And I come home before curfew. I toss my dad the keys. And he says that I have what kind of an attitude? What kind of attitude?
Great.
A great attitude. A good attitude. Right? What do I say about my dad's attitude? That he has a good attitude. So I'm cool. My dad is cool. Friday night. Sunday at noon, my best friend Dexter calls me and says, Andre, can you pick me up for the movies? What do I know about Sundays? Church all day. But I'm 17. And I'm invincible. And Jesus is my friend. Right? So I go up to my dad and I say, Dad, can I borrow the car? And what does my dad say? He says no. And not only does he say no, but he gives me a lecture about how I'm leading people to hell. Right? Every negative consequence in my house, the ultimate consequence was hell. You didn't make your bed, you're going to hell. You didn't wash the dishes, you're going to hell. And my parents were very happy to either show you the way or you could go on your own. Right? So I would say that my dad had what kind of an attitude? Because he did not let me use the car. I would say he had a bad attitude. What would he then say about my attitude? That I also had a bad attitude. But wait a minute, Friday night we were cool. Sunday, now we both have attitudes.
Just on Sunday you don't have an attitude.
You said just on Sundays, right? So what's the difference? What happened? What's that?
We disagreed.
We disagree with what?
Each other.
With each other. Now this, if you want to be effective with students, this is probably the most impactful statement that I can make the whole time that we're spending together. Right? Because this will help you figure out every last student that you interact with. This is the golden key or silver bullet, as it would be, to let you into the minds of your students. The reason, okay, so here I'll give you one example closer to home for you. Have you ever been in a situation where you were a teen yourself and you asked a parent for something and they denied you that something, right? Your typical response, at least the response that I've often seen, is this one. Right? All that kind of stuff. Sighing, hissing, booing. And then all of a sudden the parent gets this clairvoyant idea that, they just tap into the universe and into your desires. And they say, you know what, I'm thinking about that. No, go ahead and do it. And you're like, oh, thank you. Right? You start purring. And, you want to rub up next to them. And I love you. Right? Now, 2 seconds ago, you hated these people. Now you love them. Why? If you want to understand our students and you want to understand their attitudes, it's important to realize what their goals are. When I accomplish my goal, I have a good attitude. When I'm not able to reach my goal, I have a bad or negative attitude. And so you're sitting in your office, or you're trying to register a student, or you're trying to even get folks to sign up for school, and they have a bad attitude. What is the one thing that you know about them for sure?
Goals.
That what?
They have goals.
That they have goals? But if they have a bad attitude, what do I know? They're not getting their goal. So as a person who is a helper to the student, I now have a twofold responsibility to them. What's the easiest thing for me to do to help them have a good attitude? Ask them what they want. I can ask, can I use the bathroom? Is that getting me to the bathroom? No. So not asking them what they want.
Understanding their goals.
So I can understand. Oh, yes, I understand.
Give them what they want.
You got to have a good attitude. If they got a bad attitude, you got to have a good attitude towards them so they can embrace.
What determines an attitude?
That conflict of, am I going to get what I want?
Is it the conflict? If I get what I want, I have a good attitude. If I don't get what I want, I have a bad attitude. Following that logic, if I have a bad attitude and you want to get me a good attitude, then you need to get me what?
What you want.
What I want. So if you have a student who has a bad attitude, the best way to help them get a good attitude is to help them get their goal, help them reach their goal. Now, what if you have a student whose goal is so obtuse, we don't have the resources for that, they don't have the capacity to actually do it, it is not something that's within the realm of possibilities, right? So a student comes here and says, I want to be an astrophysicist through your program. Is that going to happen? No, it's not going to happen. It's not possible. We don't have the resources for that, right? So then what becomes my responsibility to the student?
Explain why we can.
Okay, you can explain why. And now I'm still saying, but I want to. I want to do it. I can do it. And you're saying, I'm going to explain to you why, blah, 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 blah.
Options.
What about options?
Well, if you don't have it within you, then you let them know what their options are.
So that they can do what with that information?
Change their goal.
They change their goal. Right? So if you have a student who is who has some ideas, some thoughts of things that they can't do themselves, it's easy as bureaucrats for us to say, nope, can't do it, check. And then the bad attitude that they had when they came is the same bad attitude that they left, except that the name for that bad attitude that they have is your last name. Right? And so it's important to encourage people to make their own decisions. And so all we do is provide people information. So if you want to help someone and they have a bad attitude, first, get them what they want. And secondly, help them set new goals. My parents would say that all the time. They'd be like, boy, go to your room till you learn how to act. And I'd be in my room for a while, and then I'd step out and I'd say, to be or not to be. I spent a lot of time in my room. Right? That's not what they were talking about. What they were talking about was, son, you need to change your goals because you're not using the car on Sunday because we got to drop people off at home. We got to pick people up for the evening service. There are responsibilities that we have to have that you have to participate. So you need to change your goal. And until I was able to figure that part out, I was really frustrated with my parents. But luckily, I was able to figure it out. And you can figure that out with your students. It's great to know what their goals are, but it's more important to help them fulfill them and to help them change them or augment them when it's necessary, right? Typically when we've talked about diversity, we've talked about political correctness. We talked about that a little bit. Also, we typically end up talking about things in terms of black and white, in terms of absolutes, as well as the racial construct. Like there are no other people involved in diversity conversations. Diversity is also typically, in its classical form, has been talked about in terms of blame, guilt, and fault, that white people are to blame, and that people of color are faultless and guiltless. We are noble for suffering all the bad white people, right? But I want you to think about anything about a cultural group, right? So all the stereotypes, all the bad stuff that people might say about a cultural group that is different from you. Think about all that bad stuff. Now I want you to think about your own family. Those things that they say about other cultural groups, can you say those kinds of things about your family? For example, all those people steal. Do you have a thief in your family? Those people are drunks. You know, the whole group of them. You got at least one drunk in your family, right? So everything that we can say about another group, we can also apply to our own group. And so it's important to think outside of that box. Sometimes diversity trainings turn into therapy sessions where whoever cries or has the worst story is the winner, right? If you want therapy, I have office hours for that, and I only charge $200 an hour. All right? It's also not about meritocracy, and meritocracy is that concept that if you work hard enough, you can be just like me. What's the problem with this concept of meritocracy? If you work hard enough, you can be just like me.
I don't want to be like you.
What if you don't want to be like me, right? I mean, it would be a shame for LeBron James to have to play basketball the way I do, right? That would be a shame, right? And also, what makes me the ruler? Why does everyone have to measure up to me or my ideals of what success is, right? And then lastly, diversity is not about tolerance. And, you know, people get nervous when I talk about this because that's what we teach our kids in school. That's their websites dedicated to, you know, teaching tolerance or having tolerance. People have made, you know, books and careers out of this whole concept of tolerance. But what does tolerance mean? What's the definition?
Putting up with it.
To put up with.
So you're not embracing it.
And not embracing it? Okay. To put up with. Tolerance. To put up with something, right? So my brother-in-law came to visit, and I tolerated that dude. Why?
It's a nice thing to do.
Peace.
What's that?
It's the nice thing.
It's
to
the
do.
nice thing to do for peace. I knew when that dude was going home. What tolerance says is that I will put up with something until when? I don't have to. And so when we talk about diversity, are our communities getting less diverse? No. Right? Are our human communications getting simpler? I would say no. I'd say they're getting more complex every day. And so diversity is not about tolerance. And I know a lot of people are like, you know, well, isn't political correctness, meritocracy, and tolerance, aren't those good first steps for diversity? Aren't those great initiatives to undertake? And I would say, yeah, babies drink milk. Why do babies drink milk? What was that now?
Because they have to.
Because they have to.
Easy to stomach.
It's easy on their stomach.
You give it to them.
We give it to them. And it's the earliest form of nourishment that babies can have. But even babies move from milk to tofu. I'm a vegetarian. More of an omnivore, actually. Right? So political correctness and meritocracy and tolerance are great first steps, but all too often people treat those as if they are destinations, right? Like this is the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas. I have arrived. When in fact there is no arriving at the destination. There is only the journey, right? And so keeping these things in mind. So are we playing? Guess we're not playing, so we'll keep going. This is just my family and all this kind of stuff. And the only thing I'd like to point out is that, well, this is me as a little baby. Aren't I cute? This is us in the 70s. This is our Easter photo. Many of you aren't old enough to remember, but there was this company called Olin Mills, and we would go every Easter to get our Olin Mills pictures, right? Okay, cool. And I don't know if you noticed, but my bow tie is as big as my head. Anybody notice that? Right? And then this is my family in our Cosby years. You know, if you look close, you can see Vanessa and Theo. Right? And then this is me in my teen years, and here I'm holding a double-barrel sawed-off shotgun, which context is everything, right? So we were at a concert taking pictures, and the name of the band was Public Enemy. So that's why I'm holding a gun, because I'm a Public Enemy. Long story. And then these are my grandparents, and that's my dad and my two uncles. And I like sharing this just a little bit because